Welcome back to Gasoline and Guns. Today I'm going to be doing a quick little video about riding the rain and, to a lesser extent, other bad weather. To begin with, the most important thing you need to worry about when riding in less than ideal weather is what kind of tires do you have on your bike. If you have a super sport bike and you're riding on some sticky track street rubber that's designed to be as sticky as possible, it's going to be intended for dry use. It'll still work in the wet, but it won't be as good as it normally is. Now, if you're on a dual sport or maybe a fat cruiser tire or a more general purpose street tire, then it'll be less of an issue. But if you are running tires that are basically DOT approved slicks, you're going to want to be a little careful with your throttle hand. But other than that, the most important and obvious thing about riding in the wet is staying dry. Staying dry is not only a safety issue with things like hypothermia, because it gets much colder much faster once you start adding water plus the wind. And then when the temperatures start to fall, it gets even worse. So staying dry is your best possible defense against a lot of things. Staying dry is very important because not only will it keep you more comfortable, it'll keep your mind off of being soaking wet. When your socks are soggy and your gloves are stretching and you can feel your shirt is getting completely soaked underneath your jacket and you're starting to get uncomfortable and you're worried about that, you're going to start worrying about being comfortable, and you're not going to be paying attention to what's happening on the road in front of you. And it's really dangerous. Even in general, distracted driving is not something we want to be doing on motorcycles. On a related note, you want to stay warm, especially in the fall and in the spring, and even in the winter. Some people are crazy enough to ride in the winter like me. But when you get down into the low 40s, 30s, 20s, you really got to stay warm. You really have to wear extra layers and plan out your wardrobe so you have an extra base layer on, then your normal clothes, then your riding gear, and then I like to wear something even extra on top of my riding gear, another padded jacket to keep the wind out of my vents. Because staying warm and avoiding hypothermia is a major issue in the cold and in the wet in lesser extreme temperatures. When it's 50 degrees and rainy, it's easy to start getting numb, even when you don't expect it. Other things that you wouldn't really think about worrying about in the rain, but you need to, is visibility. Yes, we're used to riding like everyone's blind and no one's looking at us. But in the rain, when people's vision is obscured due to mist, especially on the freeway, mist, windshield wipers going back and forth, rearview mirrors are all covered in water droplets and they can't see very well, their blind spots are worse. They're concentrating on other stuff they shouldn't be, not checking their blind spots. So not only is your visibility poor, and not even think about the fact that we don't have windshield wipers on our visors. So Rain-X works, but it doesn't work very good. And I think honestly it gives a little bit of a glare in the sun, so I don't use it. But visibility is poor. And yes, realistically, you have pretty much the same amount of traction on paper in the wet as you do in the dry. That's not really true, and you shouldn't ride the same. You need to give extra following distance and be more careful when you accelerate. It is much easier to spin that rear tire in the wet. And everybody knows that a high side is a terrible thing to have. Another thing that's harder in the wet is to pay attention to the road conditions, because when the road is wet, you can't see imperfections as well, and you have to deal with things like standing water and all sorts of nonsense like that. But it's real easy for little bits of gravel to be hiding under that little bit of water, and you have to pay really close attention to make sure that you're not actually riding in some mud and not just a little bit of water, because that can be real dangerous. And the worst thing, especially in the fall, is wet leaves. Wet leaves are the second most slippery thing I've ever encountered on the road. They are more slippery, in my opinion, than oil spills. The wet leaves they'll give you a bad day. But the only thing more annoying and more slippery in the wet than leaves are the big white stickers they use to, mark crosswalks, and those like turn only stickers, and the white lines at intersections and all that. Those, not the paint ones, but the ones that are the roll-on stickers, are so incredibly slippery. I try and avoid braking over them, but even more importantly than that is when you're slowing to a stop at an intersection, be as careful as you can to not put your feet down on those white lines, because I don't know about your boots, but my boots will not have any traction on those things at all, and it is very easy to almost just slip over and fall, just coming to a stop and putting your feet down. Yeah, those white stickers are dangerous. The yellow is not so bad, but the white is really, really slippery in the wet. There are some actual advantages to riding in the rain. One, you don't have to drive a car, because cars are boring. I will ride as much as I possibly can, as long as I possibly can. Even when it comes to winter driving, as long as there's not snow on the road itself, I will probably be riding. I actually had a good story about that. I'm not sure I have time to tell you guys about it now, but my first ever motorcycle, first one that I bought and owned myself, this 2001 ZR7S. I actually bought it in January for my own birthday, and I rode it home in an Ohio winter, and it was about 15 degrees that day. I rode it about 30 miles. I had on, I was such a sight going down the road. It was long underwear, a pair of jeans, pair of, overalls over that, and then snow pants, and I had on, like 5 undershirts, some t-shirts, some flannels, my riding gear, and then a big old parka over that. Just going down the road with my helmet on and like about 5 gaiters around my neck and a scarf. But, it's doable. And riding in inclement weather has a bit of an ego trip involved to it, because you'll notice the people who would have, like the riders who are sunny day only riders, they'll look at you different. And, normal people will be like confused over, why didn't you drive your car to work today? Well, why should I have driven my car to work today? It was a perfectly acceptable day to be out riding. It was 55 degrees and rainy all day. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. So there is a bit of an ego trip involved. But riding in the rain is not as scary as it seems like it would be. It's perfectly safe if you ride sane, if you keep reasonable following distances, if you don't drive terribly, and most importantly is that you have to stay prepared and dress accordingly. If you can keep those basic principles, then, equipment allowing, you could ride all year no matter where you are. you'll be seeing me still riding in December and January, and this is the Great Lakes Snow Belt. I'm 20 minutes from Lake Erie, and you're gonna see me out in January. Should be fun.